Hello and welcome to the Side Netting Podcast, the place where every week we discuss the latest goings on in the world of football, play a game or two, and also almost definitely go off on a tangent. I'm joined as always by my cousin, my friend, but most importantly, my co-host, Kieran Burke. Kieran, how are you getting on?
Good evening to you, Conboy. We are getting on good. Coming to the end of another week, and the Premier League has finally returned after what has felt like an eternity during the international break. So happy days.
The international break always just drags on and on and on. At least if there's like maybe an exciting game or two, it gives you something. Give me anything juicy, and just this international break gave me nothing except discourse around booing an anthem, and that is not something we're gonna give any time to on the pod.
Yeah. Probably best not, but international break is boring as ever, and this one felt extra long for some reason. I think maybe because there's only been 4 games in the Prem so far, so we had less memories to live off for the past couple.
And we've
of
only
weeks,
got only got a few weeks until the next one comes along. So
don't remind me.
Joy of joys. See, the police are fuming about it. I can hear them on their way to FIFA headquarters in your background there as we speak.
Well, recent events in Boreham Wood suggest they're on the way over to you, mate. So we'll leave the machete wielding to B-Wood, and over here we're safe.
Chaos in the last day, Kiers. The police hovering around the place. There was all sorts of goings on in my estate yesterday.
I heard you had your hammer out again.
Oh, you know me. I'm always walking around town, hammer on full display. But aside from machete-wielding antics in Boreham Wood, we'll jump straight back into the exciting return of Premier League football. So what we'll do, Kiz, is we have our 5 prediction games. So we'll talk about them, talk a bit more in depth, drop into our predictions, and then we'll have a little overview and discussion of the other games we have this weekend as well.
Sounds like a plan.
So, first game on the board for predictions. So we'll have a discussion on the game, and then I'll get a prediction at the end. Villa and Palace.
Yes, so I think it's a tough one to call this one. Villa probably haven't had the start many expected. Obviously, started very poorly with that loss at Newcastle. Picked up a bit, but just been a bit underwhelming for me. A few positives for them. Obviously, Diaby's looked a very good player. Obviously, one of their additions over the summer. But for me, as a whole, they're still looked a bit underwhelming. Obviously, just before the international break, Liverpool beat them very comfortably. So Palace, obviously, been probably better than a lot of people were expecting at the start of the season. So, and Villa yet to really get going. So 2-1 Palace for me there.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. Villa, it's been up and down. It's been up and down for Villa. They've had some tricky games. Obviously, that first game against Newcastle was a disaster. It was almost bookended, really, by disasters with that Newcastle game and that Liverpool game, and two nice, comfortable games in the middle against Everton and Burnley. So you're not really sure how they're going to come out, as you say, with Palace. They've not had the easiest of roads, sort of in reverse to Villa, where their bookender games were easier and sort of tricky games in the middle. Villa at home, wanting to pick back up. I've got them 3-1, but it really depends with Palace, as you say. That like Eze started on fine form. Edouard, sort of another up and down play. You're never really sure what you're going to get with him. But two mid-table teams and not just on their position in the league, but just in general in terms of quality and performance. 2 mid-table teams, I think, are going to give you a mid-table team game, and it could go either way. I'm sort of going with the home team, but could go up or down for me this one. But we'll stick with 3-1 Villa.
Fair play. United Brighton next, then. What are we thinking for that one?
Well, United had 2 very big tests in their first 4 games. Losing to Spurs, then losing to us. Another back in another test here against Brighton. This time at home, I'm really not sure. Brighton coming off a slip-up to West Ham recently. Obviously not in the last game, but recently. It's It's going to be difficult. It's going to be a close game. I'm not too sure. It's another... To be fair, the whole slate of games this weekend, there's maybe one or two that I feel like obvious. But in general, they're a bit tricky games. We'll get into this when we talk FPL. There's a tricky slate of games in terms of predicting what's going to happen. But I've gone United 2-1 after recently everything around that club they need to pick up in terms of performance, in terms of points, in terms of positivity around the team. They can't really afford...
It'd be funny if they lost again, though.
Oh, it'd be hilarious. So, don't get me wrong, I'm absolutely willing a Brighton masterclass. Matoma times 4, let's go. But in general, I'm not so sure. We'll say 2-1 United, but similar to the last game, it could just as easily be an embarrassment and Brighton win. It's very much an up-in-the-air week, which doesn't help with predictions or FPL. But we'll go 2-1 Man United.
As we're discussing United, obviously I said I had nothing to get me through international break. The United tears were beautiful.
We did touch on that last week.
3-1 win there. But I won't bang that drum too much. We did have an Arsenal episode last week, but thought I'd just re-emphasise that. I've gone perhaps slightly bold on this one. For me, United at the minute, there's nothing positive about that club at all.
Yep.
There's so much negativity around it, and I can't see that coming to an end against a very strong Brighton team. Obviously, they had that bit of a slip up against West Ham, but I see them picking back up where they've left off so far this season. Really, for me, they're just a very strong side. Obviously, had that good win at Newcastle
last time
just before the international break. And when we go on to FPL, I will rant about having Ferguson sat on my bench after scoring a hat-trick. Absolute masterclass from me. But yeah, I think Brighton will be far too strong for United, even with them being at home. Negativity, Sancho's being told to train by himself at the minute, so obviously player that's not performing, but another body they don't have in the squad. Anthony's obviously got that whole situation going on. At the moment, so he's not going to be about. So, I mean, they've got very little in terms of wingers going on. Obviously, here's time for me to butcher some pronunciation.
Here we go, we're back, baby! What you got for me?
Holland?
Hoyland, I believe is the pronunciation.
Hoyland? The Hodge? Can I call him the Hodge?
The big Hodge. The massive Hodge.
He looked strong, the Arsenal. I liked the look of him when he came on. He was a bit of a handful
he bullied
for
Gabriel at stages of that game. So yeah, it could go one or two ways. You say Brighton has a run of form. They obviously did have that slip against West Ham. It's not beyond the realms of possibility it happens again. United are going to need that first goal. You say 3-0. I say 2 to Brighton. I say 2-1 United. I could definitely be swayed, but we'll see what happens. Madness that that's a 3 p.m. game.
I know. I thought that. I did see something the other day, actually, someone complaining that it weren't a televised game. And there's been a few weird decisions with regards to televised games so far this season. I think that the day that Palace Wolves Liverpool Villa was on, that the Palace Wolves game was the televised game. So not sure who's making the decisions at Sky, but perhaps some questionable ones lately.
Yeah. Well, another game that's Saturday 3 p.m, which when we talk about the games we aren't predicting we'll get to, is West Ham City, which is another non-televised game. So there's a couple, even just weekend, there's a couple mad choices there.
Yeah, very strange.
Yeah, a bit weird. But we'll jump next, Kiz. Unfortunately, it's not going to be a cut and dry prediction because it's not Kenilworth Road this one.
No 5-0 this week.
But one of my good, close, personal friends supports one of these teams. So it's Fulham Luton, and...
Don't you fucking start again.
So in honour of not one, not two, but triple ADs, I have got a Fulham win here, 2-0, a comfortable double D Fulham win rather than a triple D Fulham win. It'll be an easy game. They've had a quite tricky run start of the season, Fulham, but this is exactly the team you want to play after having the tricky last couple that they've had in Arsenal. Obviously, they were able to get a point out of us, but Arsenal and City, you want to play a Luton. You want to play a team that in theory, you're just going to go and comfortably beat.
Yeah.
And for Luton, they're going into a run of games where they're going to want to start picking up points. They've got Fulham this week, Everton the next, and Burnley after that. And then they've got a real tricky run of games. So they are going to want to start going up, putting points on the board. I don't think it's going to happen this week, though. 2-0 Fulham for me.
Yeah. In attempts to save any nonsense for the second half, I'm going to disregard the first bit of your prediction and just stick to the football side. I've got 1-0 Fulham. Let's leave it at that. I've said it multiple times. I just can't see where Luton pick up points this season. Fulham haven't been great by any means. Well, of course, they managed to get a draw against us.
That says nothing.
Let's not talk about that. They then got pumped by City, as we thought they would. But yeah, Luton for me, they just don't really pose any threat going forward and they look vulnerable defensively. I don't think they're going to get hammered by Fulham, but I've gone 1-0 Fulham. I just think Fulham will come up with that little bit of quality to get the job done.
Yeah, it's very, very similar on that one. It's not one I feel like we need to dwell on too much. I think it's a game that writes itself. Luton continue to look very worrisome. They are a game behind everyone else, but I think they could be 10 games ahead of everyone else and they still wouldn't be out of that bottom three at this stage.
Yeah.
But we'll see what this weekend brings, and unfortunately, Luton fans, I think that'll only be disappointment for you. Talking of teams that have faced recent disappointment, a little seg there for you, Kiers.
Very nice. Nicely done.
Chelsea.
Yeah, I think with Chelsea it's a weird one because after that first game v Liverpool, there was quite a bit of optimism around about Chelsea. Perhaps some thoughts that the signings would bed in. Obviously, a good result to start the season, build some confidence on the back of that, and it's just not happened for one reason or another. They've really struggled to just to grind out a result. Obviously,
yeah,
as we discussed a couple of pods ago now, Luton at home was probably the ideal game for them to bounce back, which they've done. Still wasn't overly convincing if we're being completely honest, but points on the board, which I think was the main concern for them, still very underwhelming for me. So I don't think a lot of Chelsea this season. I still think they're going to struggle. Still haven't gelled as a team. Jackson up top looks threatening, but not clinical at this point, which I think can be said for a lot of their attackers. They've got kind of promising players in there, but they're by no means the finished
describes
product.
Them as a whole, doesn't it? There's
definitely
promise and potential there for Chelsea as a team, but they're just not coming together at this moment in time.
Yeah, they're good in glimpses, but over 90 minutes, they just don't seem to maintain it. So on that note, I've gone 2-1 Bournemouth. Obviously not really discussed Bournemouth there.
Okay.
But yeah, I just think it's more from the Chelsea point of view, just not being able to gel. I know Bournemouth are another side that have probably bought in a lot of players and probably haven't really got going this season yet either. They've started probably a lot poorer than they would have liked to. Obviously, they've only picked up 2 points from 4 games. They're right down there, but I think for me, they've shown a lot more promise than the other teams that are down there. They've looked good in parts from what I've seen in the games they played. Obviously, a draw away at Brentford in their last game, that's by no means a bad result. Brentford are a good side, and obviously Mbeumo scoring that kind of last minute equaliser as well. So Bournemouth probably unlucky not to get the job done there. But for me, I think Bournemouth, similar to Chelsea with the new signings, but they're bound to click at some point. And yeah, I think for me, Bournemouth will just about scrape that game.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. I think with Bournemouth, you say they'll be a little bit disappointed in terms of where they are at the minute, but you see the games they've played, 4 not easy games, and they lost to Liverpool, they lost to Spurs, no shame there. Picked up a point against a tricky West Ham team and a good Brentford team as well.
Yeah,
I think they've looked good in these first 4 games.
Yeah, I think the table doesn't quite paint the story.
Doesn't do them
Bournemouth
justice at all. And I kind of feel bad for where I'm leading myself to while I praise Bournemouth. But they've looked very good. We spoke about the manager before the season started and what this team could potentially be under him. we had very different takes on what the team could
Yeah.
potentially be under him. But they're kind of rolling into what we expected. Like, they go into three tricky games here, where they've got Chelsea, Brighton, and then us, then Arsenal. But after that, you'll imagine they'll really start rolling. I think if you're a Bournemouth fan, at the start of the season, you looked at get out of this stretch of games, and then into your Everton, Wolves, Burnley. That stretch of games is a real chance to get 9 there and start moving on, and you're kind of taking these other games as it comes. Of that stretch, though, Chelsea look the most beatable. As you say, there's just not clicking. There's something there that just isn't quite working at the moment. You imagine that they will slot into place eventually with Pochettino, but you thought that last season it just never happened. They're a real weird one, Chelsea. They're a very weird team to judge.
Yeah.
I think Bournemouth at home, it's going to be a close one. Another, like I said with most of these games, another difficult one to call. So in that case, I usually just revert to type and say 2-1 Chelsea there. But I can't say I'd be overly surprised if your prediction came in, not just because of where we are in the prediction scoreboard at this point, but also just because of the way the game is, and with Chelsea and Bournemouth, it's going to be a tricky one. But I'll settle on 2-1 Chelsea at the moment.
Could go either way. I think we said that at the start with games this week. It's a few potentially hard ones to call, so agree with what you've said there. Last but not least for our predictions, Forest v Burnley.
This is actually a game I'm quite looking forward to.
Yeah, from Burnley, I want them to do a bit more. They looked so good in the Championship last season, and it's like they're a bit scared to try and play that same way. But then, on the other hand, they're not really shutting up shop and looking hard to score against either. So for me, it's kind of like, obviously they've had a very clear identity under Vincent Kompany whilst in the Championship, and there's a bit of apprehension since they've come back up to the Prem to kind of drive on with that for me. I think Nottingham Forest presents the perfect chance. Whilst Forest have looked, don't get me wrong, Forest have looked actually pretty good so far this season for me. I think they've been very tough to break down. Obviously, good result against Chelsea. We were put under a bit of pressure by them when we scraped that 2-1.
Unlucky against United.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, they've looked good, but I think that presents a chance for Burnley to go kind of, we're here. A lot of talk around the newly promoted teams, obviously very poor start from all of them, with only Sheffield United picking up points, and it's the singular point. So I think that's the chance for Burnley to kind of announce themselves as such into the Prem, and for Kompany to try and impose that style that worked for them so well in the Championship. Although I'm saying this, perhaps it's more performance-based. I have gone 1-1.
Okay.
So I think Burnley will finally get some points on the board, but going back to what I said about Forest looking very strong defensively, you know, as a unit, I think they looked quite tough. We struggled a bit to break them down. Obviously, they kind of fell apart a bit against United, but yeah, I've gone 1-1. I think Burnley will look better than what they have done, and Forest pretty resolute as they have been so far.
Yeah, I've gone 1-1 as well. It's Burnley who look at this as their first winnable game. Obviously, their game against Luton got called off because of Kenilworth Road not being ready yet, so they're a game behind.
The carpet.
El Carpeto. They're a game behind alongside Luton. And they did beat Forest in the League Cup the other week as well, so they could look at it as a very winnable game for them based on that. But as you say, with Forest, what was on paper a very tricky start, they've managed to come out of mostly unscathed. Awoniyi is on decent form running through. I've gone 1-1 as well. I think it could be a decent game with two teams that are really going to be looking at this as a very winnable game. And definitely for Burnley for a chance to get first points on the board. Be a close one. Should be a good game. it's not usually the sort of game I'd be excited for, but I'm quite glad this is a telly game. We're talking about games earlier that why is that is that or is that not a TV game? This is one that I wouldn't necessarily have picked, but looking forward to that on Monday night.
Yeah, it's got a very Monday night game feel about it as well.
It's
can't
very
quite
Monday
describe
night
what I mean by that, but it's just it has that Monday night football feel to it. So yeah, should be a good one. Should be a good one. What score have you gone for?
Oh, I've gone 1-0.
You gone 1-0 as well. Okay, yeah. I think it will be a tight one.
Yeah, it should be a close one. What isn't a close one? After 4 weeks, Kiz, going by weeks, you're a very comfortable 3-1 up.
We love to see it.
And then on the total score, you currently have 20 points. So it's 1 point for a correct winner and 3 points for a correct result. You're on 20 points and I am on 12. The big difference is
mate.
You've got 2 correct scorelines so far across I've got none across the prediction weekly format. So that's the big difference there. That's a 4-point swing.
I think you need to just get good, really.
I think you need to grow up, if you ask me.
I think you need to grow up a bit and, get some correct.
I think this is the weekend. 5 out of 5. A big 15. A big 15 coming in, mate.
We'll see. You never know. Stranger things have happened.
But outside of predictions, there's a few other games we've not predicted that we can just have a little glimpse over, have a chat. The first one of those I wanted to talk about was West Ham Man City. So West Ham haven't lost a game yet. Man City 4 out of 4 wins in a row. Another mental one that's a 3 p.m. Saturday, as we were saying earlier, at West Ham. What do you reckon on this one?
As good as West Ham have looked so far, and give them full credit, it's really hard to see past the City win, isn't it, really? And any game you go into, City just are the favourites. It doesn't matter who they're playing in world football. They're the favourites. West Ham, fair play to them, look very good. Great result against Brighton. Picked up some good results. And, have taken their points well. But it's Man City we're talking about here. Obviously not one we're predicting, but I see City. I feel like it'll be close first half and then City will get the goal and then run away with it a little bit.
Am I naive for thinking West Ham might run them close? 3 p.m. game as well. I don't know why that makes a difference, but in my head it definitely does.
Well, they have every chance to, based on the start they've had. But for me, it's just Man City, innit? It's enough said. It's Man City. This team they've got is a joke. They just kill teams. Haaland needs one chance and it's a goal, which makes it very hard. The room for error against Man City is basically zero.
They've not been tested though so far this season either. This would be their first test, you'd imagine, but City could very likely just go out there and hammer fuck out of them, as you were saying there. You just don't know,
mate. If West Ham win that, it's West Ham tattoos all round. First they give us Declan Rice, and then they beat Man City. That would just be
everyone gets a bubble, mate.
My love for the massive hammers would be absolutely huge if they can pull that off. But I just can't see it. I hope they do. But it should be a good game, though. I think should be a good game. Annoying it's a 3 o'clock.
Yeah, we definitely won't watch.
Oh, of course not. I will not be pulling up my illegal streaming sites to watch that one.
Illegal stream? Who's she? I do not know her.
Yeah, I will not be doing that. I completely and utterly.
Is that what
disgusted.
Those police sirens are for in the background?
They come to take the dodgy stick away, mate. Opta Sport in the mud.
Oh, no dodgy sticks round here.
Oh, not at all. Not at all.
Big up IPTV. Anyway, next game we'll have a little look at. This one is on telly. Newcastle Brentford, kids.
Yeah.
Newcastle needed to bounce back. People had decent expectations for them going to this season, and they've just looked very uneven.
Yeah, to be honest, I did expect a bit of a drop-off from Newcastle this season, but not until they'd started with the fixture congestion that the Champions League brings. So for them to have started how they has surprised me, I've got to be honest. Obviously, tough game against City, which by no means was a disgrace. They ran them fairly close, and never posed a massive threat, but were hard to break down. But since they hammered Villa that first weekend, they look so good. They just haven't picked up on
Yeah.
that at all. Newcastle have really surprised me. 3 points from 4 games. As I said, once the Champions League starts, and particularly the group they've been drawn into now, I could see a bit of a drop-off coming. But not the start they've had. So, yeah, that'll be an interesting one. They've just not got going. I think we've said it about a few teams now, but Newcastle, another team, not that they've not got going, because they started amazingly v Villa.
They went going, and then they stalled.
Yeah, they stalled big time.
Yeah.
Started
Another
in
draw
fifth
for Brentford?
gear. Well, I've been predicting it every week, and judging by the scores on the boards, it's not doing me wrong so far.
They are actually the two that you've predicted right was 2 Brentford draws.
So there you go. So perhaps so. I wouldn't go against the draw in that game. It's got a bit of a draw stamped on it for me, but it depends what Newcastle turn up.
Yeah.
If it's the Newcastle that started the season v Villa, I think they'll be too strong for Brentford. But if it's the slightly underwhelming Newcastle that we've seen since then Brentford could get a result. Definitely a draw at least is feasible. So we'll see what Newcastle turn up.
Yeah, we'll gloss over Everton Arsenal because we discussed it at length last week, and we'll gloss over Wolves Liverpool because that's just a comfortable Liverpool win. I think we're both in agreement there.
Yeah. Agreed.
So we'll end on Spurs Sheffield United, which they're a team that, in a very similar manner to Bournemouth, where they've not quite hit the ground running in terms of points, they've looked decent. They've looked like a tricky team to play.
I've quite liked the look of Sheffield United this season, which perhaps slightly strange based on the league position, but obviously, again, for me, butchering some pronunciation, they lost their best player in Dai.
Yep.
I want to say, who obviously went to Marseille. Bewood boy himself, he was in Bournemouth Pace Academy.
Was he? Roots,
He
mate.
was.
There's a lot. I would say a lot. There's a couple of little Bewood roots digging around in those promoted teams. Well, I guess
not a machete wielder, but a Bewood baller. So, yeah, obviously they've had a massive loss losing him. Obviously their best player, but for me, they've looked tough to beat.
Yes,
and they've just not quite been able to get points on the board to reflect that. But I've seen a few of the bits of their games, and they've not looked bad for me. So I think they will pick up. And start of the season, going back to our start of the season predictions, I had them just to stay up in 17th, and I still stick with that. I do think they're going to have just enough to stay up. So I expect Sheffield United to start picking up results. Whether that's against Spurs, I don't know, because obviously if Spurs pick up where they left off before international break, they'll be very, very tough to beat. But, Spursy will still always be Spursy, no matter how good they look.
As a wise man once said, is the history of the Tottenham.
It is indeed. I think Sheffield United could pull off a little upset there. I don't know, potentially.
Yeah, it'll be a close one. It could be a decent little game there. Once again, not that anyone will see this by any legal means, because it's Saturday 3 p.m. But Spurs, really good form start of this season, as we were saying there. A tough Sheffield United team could be a close one. I reckon Spurs home game for them. I reckon they will win it in the end, but Sheffield United could run them close. So we'll skip through now, Kiers, to our FPL team.
Don't bring me back to the trauma of having Evan Ferguson on my bench, please.
There we go. I was going to say, anything you want to round off from last game week, and there you go. Evan Ferguson, 17 points, was it in the end? Yes,
it was indeed. I just got over it, and all the pains come flooding back.
Acting like you didn't have a stormer anyway.
I was going to say, my only consolation, 80 points on the board. Obviously, sitting top of the mini league, so slight damage limitation there, but it's a bit of a stinker. My only real consolation is it was a bit of a toss-up between him and Julian Alvarez, who done well and got 14 points, but look at the team, and Diaby sat there with 2 points. Obviously, they were playing Liverpool, so perhaps an oversight on my behalf. I just fancied Villa to do better than they did in that game, so, these things happen in an FPL, but was definitely a tough one to take for me.
Yeah, you say big 80 points. If you had Ferguson, it would have finished on 97, and I finished on 75. So think of the gap that could have opened up there.
Yeah,
Yeah, only 8
we
points.
We
only
move.
8 points in the mini league there between ourselves.
Yeah, Ferguson obviously picked up a knock because he didn't go on international duty with Republic of Ireland. So I might have a bit of a decision. Yeah, I might have a decision to make this week because I've sat on my transfer as of now, so need to make a call whether I make a change. Gahey picks up a knock with England as well. Reece James I still have just because I've not had it.
He's still there. Why is he still there?
He's still there purely because I've prioritised getting other players out. I had a lot of players with knocks in my squad, so
Might as well keep him in it.
Yeah, to be honest, he has been given a chance to come back in this week. I don't think he'll start, but he might be in the squad. And they don't have, an awful run of games now, so I might just stick with him and get out either Gahey or Ferguson based on them also having knocks.
Yeah, that's the tricky thing though, is making that decision between, is it a knock worthy of taking a player out or just benching them? I think on both of those cases, I think they'll probably only be out a week from the looks of things.
It is, and then alongside that, you've got the players with knocks, but then you've got players that aren't performing, and it's like, what do you prioritise? Whether you kind of take the hit a little and wait for a player to get back to fitness and kind of in the knowledge that they'll probably, if they're one of the stronger players, they might come in and pick up points straight away. Or do you get out the players? Obviously, I've got Diaby in my squad now.
I was going to say, is there anyone in mind when you say that?
He's only really had one good week for me. Obviously, my Arsenal assets as well. I've got triple Arsenal going on, and we've not looked overly convincing. I know we've discussed Arsenal at length already last week, so I'm not going to kind of go on about that. But Saka and Martinelli haven't lit up the league yet. I'd say they've still looked good in the games, but in terms of pure returns based, looking at from an FPL point of view, for players that are kind of higher value players that you want to see returning every week, they're probably not where I'd want them to be. So some decisions to be made for me. What about yourself? Have you got anyone in mind that's getting the sack?
Well, I've sacked one off. I made one transfer.
Okay.
I took out
the unlucky player.
I took out João Pedro because he's just not been bloody starting.
Yeah. Brighton are a tricky one. I think De Zerbi's taken a leaf out of Pep's book. De Zerbi roulette is the new flavour of the month.
Oh mate, it's definitely going that way. That's because like you put in one of your Brighton boys and then you look and he's not playing and you just, can you risk that? Can you? And with Pedro, I definitely can. So I brought in Visser for Brentford. Okay. Yeah. So I brought in this week. And so I had the decision to make about, because I've got Isak as well, he's my player that is hanging on by a thread for me at the moment. He's sort of middle ground in terms of returns.
Yeah, he had that one good week. I think he got a brace, but then since then probably been a little underwhelming.
Yeah. He is in the team name, so that gives you a little extra grace.
Yeah, it gives him a bit more leeway.
Yeah, but I've got Visser and Isak both starting this week, playing against each other. So,
we'll the Giants.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there. But this is where we were talking earlier about the tricky fixtures. Is, have you made a decision on your captain? Because it's a real, like, Haaland would be your usual one, but they're playing West Ham. That's not a walk in the park. Isak and Visser playing each other. Rashford playing Brighton. Saka away to Everton. Our history away at Everton is very poor. Eze against Villa. Luis Diaz is an option for me there away to Wolves. He's the sort of option outside of Haaland for me at the minute.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I've not thought about this week at length yet, which I probably should considering it's Thursday evening. But I'm still kind of umming and ahhing about the transfer I bring in. That could influence who I captain. Obviously, Haaland's always the default option, but it's going to take a bit of further thought this week. I've got Sterling there. And obviously we've touched about Chelsea being underwhelming, but he did have that week against Luton where he kind of got a lot of points on the board.
But it is Luton.
It is Luton, exactly. Diaby for Villa, again, he's been a bit underwhelming for me. He's one of those players that could go and bang a hat-trick one week. So
100%.
It's a tough one to call. So Yeah, and then obviously we look at Arsenal, got Saka and Martinelli there. On paper, we should win comfortably against Everton, but we spoke about
What's
it
your
at
gut
length last
instinct
week.
saying in terms of captain?
My gut instinct's going to Haaland, which is a bit boring, but I just think City always... You see a tough game on paper and they just make it look like a walk in the park and never really have to get out of first, second gear. So he would be my default, but who I transfer in or out could influence who I end up going for. So it's definitely not set in stone for me yet this week.
So it's one we'll keep an eye on and discuss next week. I think I'm leaning. If I'm feeling exciting, it's going to be one that goes down to the wire. I think if I'm feeling excited, I'm going to go Diaz because I do fancy him to hammer Wolves. If I'm feeling a bit boring, then I'll keep with Haaland. But we'll see. As we say, we'll keep an eye over the weekend. We'll round up our FPL alongside the latest set of predictions next week. But we'll move on now, Kiers. Up next, we have a debut segment where we'll discuss the brackets. So up next, we have a brand new segment here at the Sidenet Podcast. We have the brackets. So every time we drop into the bracket, we'll set 4 people, areas, activities, whatever, under the category each, and they'll go into our bracket and we'll have a little debate and decide which one advances on and will be decided, which one we decided the winner of the bracket. So this week, Kiers, our first bracket, there can only be one
One from your genius brain this week.
Well, very much my genius brain, which is not protected by any hair follicles whatsoever. So in honour of that, we've got bald managers. So it's a little mix of their baldness, so the balder the better, and their just managerial ability. So it's a mix of the two we're going to be debating. So we've picked 4 each. Kiers, do you want to give us your 4 selections?
Yes, I certainly can. Choices from me are Pep Guardiola,
Basic
Zinedine Zidane. I've then got Thierry Henry, and lastly I have Roberto Di Matteo.
As a manager, Thierry Henry is an incredibly rogue call there.
If that man can get Lukaku scoring goals for Belgium, I've got no doubt in his ability as a manager.
It's not bald assistant managers, though, is it?
You know. He had managing as well. He was managing in America as well, wasn't he?
He managed Monaco, he managed Montreal. We'll get into Henry's managing credentials.
Legend of the game. Manager, legend of the game.
I would kill for that man, but as a manager, I don't know if I'd even leave a bruise for that man. But my picks, we've got Allegri, Tony Pulis, Sean Dyche, and Eric Ten Hag. They're my bald men of choice there. So what we've done with each set is we've seeded them. So for Kieran's choices, Pep is seed number 1, Zidane seed number 2, Di Matteo seed number 3, and Henry seed number 4. And for myself, Allegri is seed number 1, Ten Hag seed number 2, Dyche seed number 3, and Pulis seed number 4. So they've then gone into their bracket, and our first matchup, Kiers, is Pep Guardiola against Tony Pulis.
What a matchup.
Let's debate this.
I've got to just say at the start of this, I think you've been snubbed for this segment. Obviously, you had your stint with the under-12 girls team, and whilst it may not be at an elite level, your boldness alone would have really pushed the conversation close. So I do apologise. I think throwing you in there.
I was in at straight number 1, if not for the fact that for a good chunk of that managerial career, I was a haired man.
Oh, that is disappointing. We can see past that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think we all know who'd be straight in at number 1 otherwise. But, you know, you've got to give other people a chance sometimes, Kiz.
That's it, exactly. I mean, I've got no doubt you'd be winning in a matchup against Tony Pulis. And I hope to God we're in agreement Pep Guardiola's taking home that winner there. But we'll see what your thoughts are. But for me, my hatred for Tony Pulis, number 1, the fact he wears a cap, he's ashamed of his baldness.
Whoa, that's I like.
Throw that in there.
I tell you what, we don't even need to talk about the fact he has basically 0 ball credentials, which something that I didn't realise until I looked on his on his stats is I thought he'd at least like won a playoff trophy or a championship, or he's won nothing.
He's as Brexit as they come.
His trophy cabinet is as bald as his head.
Yeah. For me, he's number one. He's not embracing his baldness, so he's ashamed.
That's an excellent point.
You got Pep, who displays that shiny bald head wherever he goes, and he's got the suit. He's a little turtleneck. He just, the sophistication of Pep's bald alongside his obvious managerial prowess is it should be an easy
thing with
match
Pep is
right
he's
there.
not just bald. He's somehow done the very rare thing of being fashionably bald.
Yeah. Are we going Pep?
I don't think we need to have any more of a discussion there. I think Pep is the only choice there, and the less I have to talk about Tony Pulis, the better.
Agreed.
So Pep has advanced to the semi-final stage, but Kears, who's going to meet him? Is it going to be Zinedine Zidane, Triple D Babs, or is it going to be my favourite guy, the Ginger Mourinho, the massive twat, Sean Dyche, a man that is only popular because he is A, British, and B, has a gravelly voice. If Sean Dyche was from Italy, I know it's the reverse of the usual argument that was made, but if Sean Dyche was from Italy, he would be called a basic manager.
Don't forget, he loves a pint, so he must be an
congratulations.
Con, can I just remind me, you have put Dyche forward in this one. Sounds like you're fighting your own corner against it here.
Oh, I was thinking he's a bald manager. There's nothing I can do here. He's a bald
about
manager.
As good as it gets for Dyche. Regular listeners of the Side Netting Pod will be fully understanding of the Dyche hatred that goes on seemingly on a weekly basis at this point.
Cheers. We are nothing if not a Sean Dyche hatred podcast.
We pretty much are at this point. I won't even lie. He comes up, his hatred spews out every week, and you know what? For me, I'm in total agreement.
One of the most overrated managers in the Premier League.
And not just that. Obviously, that's enough reason for Zidane to win alone. But an amazingly bald man, and bald. He
is the other fashionably bald man I was going to mention.
Yeah, baldness throughout the years, displaying Champions League trophies, and I'm going to have to refer to photos throughout this bracket just to remind me of the level of baldness we've got going on. And yeah, a beautifully bald man, Zidane.
Sean Dyche has... I would class him as bald, but there's a little patch there, isn't there? There's like a ginger patch.
There is, and the gingerness as well. Like the ginger beard, along with the baldness, I think just... he looks like your typical council estate, straight from the tin kind of guy, for me. And, then you've got Zidane on the other hand, who's just classy bald. So
classy is the exact way to describe it. But we said it was half down to them being bald and half down to their managerial career. And Zidane's managerial career, 3 Champions Leagues. I don't even need to get into league titles or Copa del Rey's or anything. 3 Champions Leagues. Sean Dyche,
four Champions Leagues.
4 Champions Leagues, I believe it's 3 Champions Leagues.
Oh yeah, no, I'm saying for Sean Dyche, mate, 4 Champions Leagues.
Sean Dyche couldn't even get 4 Champions Leagues on Football Manager.
Well, I'll tell you who could. What's the fella's name from Reims? Will Still, a well-known Football Manager.
If Will Still was bald, he'd be in over Sean Dyche.
Oh, he'd be in.
If Will Still wants to shave his head and get in touch immediately, I will swap this bracket around. Zidane would still beat him, but he'd be our ginger bald of choice over Sean Dyche.
Can we go out to Will Still this week via social media and just try and get him to go bald within the next week, just so we can edit Dyche out of this podcast for the sake of humanity?
Start the campaign here.
Will Still for bald. Get it
and if there is any other bald managers that anyone feels should have been included in the bracket that we've missed, do get in touch, comment on the pod, or drop us a message at SideNettingPod, and any other comments, notes on the episode, and we'll be sure to give those a read and maybe respond on the show as well. But Kears, Zidane?
Yeah, Zidane goes in for me all day.
Easy as that. Fantastic. So let's jump across. I don't think you're going to like this one, Kiers, but Allegri, Henry.
I'm going to start off with some defence of Henry. If we're talking pure managerial ability, managerial history, success as a manager, it's a no-brainer, it's Allegri. However, I feel there's debates over Allegri's level of baldness, first off. There is some hair there.
Is he balding or is he bald?
Yeah, so there's a debate there. Henry is gloriously bald and has been for many years. And speaking of fashionable bald, Thierry Henry just pulls it off like no other. When I see clips of the CBS coverage, it is CBS, isn't it? With Kate Abdo,
CBS.
He just, in the suit, the bald head gleaming, with the studio lights beaming down on him. It's just, he pulls it off like no one else quite can.
Kiers, you don't need to convince me on Thierry Henry being a beautiful, gorgeous, sublime bald man. He's a top tier bald. If this was just bald men, world over, regardless of sport, race or creed, he'd be there. But it's the manager side of things.
My only defence I'm going to give Thierry is I feel like he could have done more managerially than he has. Obviously, he's been at Monaco, which is a decent level, was only there for a year though, so it's hard to really go off. Spent 2 years with Montreal Impact over in the MLS, and obviously he's just taken on a role with France under-21s, which obviously we can't really say much on. I think with all the TV work he has done in the past has probably led him to not go down the managerial path, even though I feel like he probably has the credentials there that he could, but obviously based on what he has done, well, we can't really just speculate. So I think I'd agree. I think Allegri scrapes it, but I think it's closer than
maybe it should be.
Than it should be. Yeah, purely because Henry is just gloriously bald. But
what a man! I love Henry. He is a man that has my entire heart, soul, and mind, but he's not a manager.
Hard to argue with that. We'll go Allegri.
The last quarter-final matchup, and this could be an interesting one. Erik ten Hag and Roberto Di Matteo. What you reckon, Kiz?
Well, I'm going to, again, refer back to the glorious world of Wikipedia and Google Images just to refresh the memory.
Oh, Di Matteo's definitely bald enough.
Oh, he's definitely bald. I'm just seeing the levels. A man with a very weird head shape, Di Matteo. I must say.
Not necessarily a man with a bald head shape, but nonetheless, I think he pulls it off with the big eyebrows.
Yeah. To start off with, managerially, obviously, Di Matteo, a man that's won the Champions League with Chelsea.
And that is my entire argument.
So, when we're talking managerial-wise, obviously that's his crowning jewel, if you will. And even despite that, still managed to get sacked. And I think from memory, they didn't have a good season in the league that year as well. So, despite, obviously, probably the biggest trophy in club football, still arguments over how successful he was. Then obviously was at Schalke for a year and then Villa as well. So, if we're just talking purely managerially, I think for me Ten Hag edges it. I know he's still managerial terms. He's still quite kind of.
This is where I think it gets. Yeah, this is where I think it gets a little controversial. Is I don't think he does edge it managerially. Okay. Roberto Di Matteo has won a Champions League.
Very true. Very true.
Done. I don't think Ten Hag edges. He's not taken a team into the semi-finals. Oh no, he did. He lost
Ajax,
to.
He did. I think
he did. He lost to Spurs. He's not taken to a final anyway.
I think the
my
fact
apologies.
he lost to Spurs alone, especially
and
the
he
position.
Not just did he lose to Spurs, he fucked it to Spurs.
Yeah.
And he caused me to have a real stressful time. So that puts him even worse. But he's won a few leagues with Ajax. That's the Eredivisie is outweighed by the Champions League.
Yeah, big time. You pose a very good argument there.
What's your Ten Hag argument if you've got one?
Well, obviously it's a slightly strange one because we're arguing the case for each other's picks here. But I don't know. I feel like Ten Hag. It's a difficult one because he spent quite a bit of time with Ajax, and obviously they were such a highly thought of team, but success. If we're talking purely success-wise, you probably are right. Di Matteo Champions League outweighs pretty much anything else. But if you ask Chelsea fans how successful Di Matteo was and how he rates against other Chelsea managers, I don't think they'd put him in like super high regards. Even just obviously a Champions League, they're gonna have love for him. But
I think if you talk to a Chelsea fan, they would put him near the top of Chelsea managers purely for that Champions League.
Okay, maybe we need a Chelsea fan's opinion to truly settle it. But going on to Baldness, which obviously is the other part of our debate, I think Ten Hag for me is a winner in Baldness. He's
not an out and away winner. Not enough to flip the combined percentage.
Edge it either way. But I think for me, he's got an absolute cranium on him. And
he's got an absolute noggin.
Hair. He's potentially the baldest of all men in this list, alongside Henry, arguably. So that pushes him up a bit for me. But Di Matteo is very bald also, but perhaps a bit more hair. I don't know whether the fact when he was managing Chelsea he had a bit of hair going on goes against him.
Oh, you've changed the game there. Because when he won the Champions League, how bald was he? That is
I'm looking at photos here, and there's arguments to be had, I've got to say.
That is an
Definitely
excellent point.
hair.
Kieran John, you have just blown this thing wide open. Let's have a look. We're going to judge it down to there. Oh, no, he's bald. He is bald there, Kiz. He is bald with the Champions League here.
I've got a photo here of him, and he doesn't look bald, but that might have been a couple
check
weeks
the
after,
shadow.
'cause it's
Check the shadow.
bust.
He's bald.
Okay. Well, we'll give him... So, going off a fully bald Di Matteo with his Champions League and a fully bald Ten Hag with not a Champions League, are we edging towards Di Matteo?
Yeah, I'm definitely edging towards Di Matteo.
Okay. Yeah, I think the argument you posed there...
Speaking a couple of years, maybe Ten Hag will have done enough by then, but right now, that Champions League outweighs his entire success.
Yeah, okay, let's go Di Matteo.
I think that might be a controversial one. Oh, okay, the semis. We've got a big one here, Kiz.
Huge semis.
There's a massive semi in front of me here. The shadow this semi is casting across my face right now is...
unbelievable.
Absolutely magic. Okay. So, in gigantic semi number 1, Pep Guardiola against Zinedine Zidane.
Ooh. For me, this is the big one. I think this could be the overall decider.
Yeah, you get those semi-finals. Like whoever wins this is winning it all.
Yeah, it's got that feel to it. I'll let you start off the argument on this one.
Well, this one is going to be more of a debate because I don't have a clear cut. I think when you look at, they both have 3 Champions Leagues to their belts, but Pep just has everything. They both have, mad considering his last few years. They each have 2 FIFA best managers, and Pep's are from the early 2010s, the 2008 and 2010. He won World's Best Coach, which is mad that he's not won any of those. Yeah. This is according to Transfermarkt, if I'm incorrect, but I've got his list of honours here in front of me. 2008 and 2010, and then Zidane has 2017, 2018. So. They're not too dissimilar. I think Pep does edge it.
Yeah.
With the Premier League, he's won 5 Premier Leagues, 5 and 6 seasons. I think Baldness, they're dead level. You've got to go on managerial here because there's nothing for me. There's nothing separating the Baldness. I don't know if you agree.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. For me, Pep Guardiola has revolutionised football in terms of playing styles. He's done it at different clubs, which I think comes into it. Obviously, Barca, Bayern, City with his Champions Leagues. Zidane's only ever been at Real, and having a look now, he's only been a manager for 4 years.
But does that not also swing it back in his favour in that he's done this in such a short period of time? He's won 3 Champions Leagues, 2 leagues, 2 FIFA Bests, 2 Club World Cups, 2 UEFA Super Cups, 2 Spanish Super Cups.
I think that's definitely an argument to be had, but I think for me, longevity has to come into play as well.
Yeah.
And for me, doing it at 3 different clubs is far more impressive than having an unbelievable team that win it back to back to back.
Yeah.
So, for me, I'm leaning towards Pep. No doubt on Zidane's baldness and managerial ability. But for me, Pep is the epitome of a bald manager.
He is the bald manager, isn't he?
He is the bald manager.
You ask any football fan to name a bald manager, Pep will probably be the first person they name.
Yeah, exactly that. I think for me, not a clear winner, but Pep does take this one for me.
Yeah, for me. It's gone to extra time. It's not quite hit penalties. It's gone to extra time. Last minute winner, Maria 90+7, and Pep does take it.
Yeah, I think so.
So Pep's in the final, but who is he going to face, Kiz? Is it going to be Allegri with his 2 Champions League runners-up alongside all of his other various achievements in Italy? Or is it Di Matteo with his Champions League? Is that enough to carry him all the way?
Well, starting with baldness, I think they're a similar level of bald going on. They're not quite the full shebang for me. They've kind of got that little stubbly baldness going on where they're trying to hold on a little bit to a bit at the back. Di Matteo's probably slightly balder for me.
Di Matteo's definitely balder.
Yeah,
but there's clear.
Di Matteo wins it in baldness, but managerial wise, for me,
Allegri.
It's Allegri. I know Di Matteo winning the Champions League definitely edges him.
Allegri's at least been there.
Yeah, exactly. Henry didn't really have any managerial kind of leg to stand on, shall we say, and he still ran it a bit close. For me, Allegri's in a completely different.
Allegri
bracket.
beat Henry. It was Ten Hag that was against Di Matteo.
Of course. But for me, I would be leaning towards Allegri. I'm not sure the outcome of this will ultimately matter too much. But I think
you're right there, Kiz. Yeah, but I think you're right there. I think Di Matteo, one Champions League, as good as that is, but one Champions League and an FA Cup can only run you so far when you face a manager like Allegri. So I'd agree with you there. Allegri into the final. I think we've already done this debate for ourselves, Kiz.
Yeah. I think clear winner. The bald manager, king of the balds, Mr. Pep Guardiola, I think.
Congratulations, Pep. I'm sure this is going to be equally up there with Pep Guardiola's honours that he's had in his career so far. So congratulations, Pep.
Oh, absolutely.
Get
in touch to claim your bald cap, Pep, if you want it. Just to go double bald.
Your gold bald cap. So your first winner of the bracket, the winner of the bald bracket, Pep Guardiola. Okay, Kiz. Are we happy with that bracket as a whole? Are you happy with all of our choices? Anything you think that Ten Hag battle a bit controversial? Happy with our end results?
I think all in all, Pep came out where he should have came out. Potentially some debates to be had. Depends how you weight baldness v managerial ability. I think we split it quite fairly. We had a good debate of both baldness and managerial ability. So I think in the end there was one clear winner.
100%. Well, that leads us to the end of the podcast. We're going to continue the bald theme and playing us out after we say our goodbyes. There can only be one man. It's going to be Pitbull and a bit of hotel room service. So, Kiz, thank you for joining me again this week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. See you all again next week.